Joining us now is David Coletto, the founder and the CEO of Abacus Data. Hello, David.
Good to see you, Michael. How are you doing?
And you, I'm good, thank you. So we now have Pierre Poilievre surpassing even Stephen Harper by securing more than 87% of his party's support. But, it has been suggested by some, among them Jason Kenney, that the support was not entirely enthusiastic. So how secure can Poilievre feel in his position right now?
I mean, you're never fully secure, especially after you've lost, two members of parliament crossing over to the Liberals prior to the end of the year. So I think there's always a risk there. But I do think that, this reflects two things that we know from our own polling. And that one is that, Pierre Poilievre finds wide appeal, lots of enthusiasm among the base of the Conservative Party. And two, there doesn't appear to be anyone else that can do what he's done, which right now is keep that base united. So yes, he's got probably some challenges in growing the Conservative universe, but he has done a good job in keeping that 40% or so of Canadians who voted Conservative last year still rallying around the Conservative Party, even as Mark Carney becomes more popular in the context that we're in.
Mark Carney growing more popular in what we're seeing right now. But, you talked about growing the Conservative vote here, and we didn't see anything new in terms of policy from Poilievre. Instead, we saw, certainly on Friday night's speech at least, a slight change in tone. Is that enough to turn around the impression Canadians have of this Conservative leader?
It's I don't know for sure, but I think unlikely. Any reputation work I do is once somebody has a negative impression of you as a person, a brand, an institution, it's very hard to change. It requires them to look at you through an entirely different lens. And unless the world fundamentally changes, I think that's going to be really hard for Pierre Poilievre to achieve. Now, that doesn't mean you need to love somebody to vote for them. You just need to believe that they're the best alternative, or that the alternative, in this case, let's say Mark Carney, is less desirable than he is. So everything operates not in a vacuum in comparison. And so there is, I think, a path that you could imagine Pierre Poilievre winning an election, even if he's not the most beloved federal party leader, or even in the case of the question on who makes best PM, he overtakes Mark Carney in the future on something like that.
And what's that path for Mark Carney to not deliver on the promises he's made?
I think that's part of it. I think people need to feel far less confident and trustworthy in Mark Carney. He's doing quite well on those measures right now. I think other scenarios would be the economy gets significantly worse, people's anxiety around jobs or the cost of living continues to rise. These are areas where the Conservatives typically do well. Concerns around immigration, around crime, those are the issues that the Conservatives often win on. And we've known from the past year that any time that the public's attention to Donald Trump dissipates, we see the Conservative vote share go up. And so, those are the kinds of things that need to happen. It's not all going to be on Pierre Poilievre's own that he can change the direction. It also, I think, will require highly likely that the New Democrats do better than they did in April of last year, if the Conservatives are going to find a way to get back into a place where they can win again.
So a complicated calculus, if you will, to make that happen. And, I want to pick up a bit on the polling that you did going into the Conservative convention, because your research, it indicated that, that there does exist a divide between the Conservative base and Canadians outside that base when it comes to issues. And during the convention, we saw issues like conversion therapy and gender-affirming surgeries come up for debate. They didn't pass, but they came up for debate amongst the grassroots. So what kind of challenge does that present for Conservatives and Pierre Poilievre if he is looking to broaden his coalition?
Well, I think, first it shows just how diverse a coalition the Conservative Party is today. It includes social conservatives, cultural conservatives, economic conservatives, and they all, stitch together to build a complicated and at sometimes, conflicting quilt, if I'm going to use that analogy. But here's the challenge, I think, and it's not one that only Pierre Poilievre faces. I think this has been a problem facing Conservative politicians for a long time at the national level, is how, if you try to moderate, if you try to move away from what the base wants, the tone, the focus, the attention that they want you to pay on some issues, and you try to reach out to that middle, the so-called, accessible voter that exists for the Conservatives, there's risk you demotivate or you alienate or you push some of those conservative, hardcore conservatives to someone else, as we saw in the 2021 federal election, where I think many left the O'Toole Conservative Party and went and embraced Max Bernier at the People's Party. So you have this really difficult task of keeping your base together, which compared to the Liberals or the New Democrats is the largest. They've got a really high floor, but in doing so, you do risk that ceiling comes down quite a bit. And that is the constant paradox, I think, that's faced Stephen Harper, Andrew Scheer, and Erin O'Toole, and now Pierre Poilievre since the two parties merged in 2003.
Yeah, and add to that, and again, I'm quoting your survey to you, was it 1 in 5 Conservatives approve of Mark Carney's performance as Prime Minister?
Yeah, and that's the other context. This is not Justin Trudeau. This is not a Prime Minister in which only 12% of Canadians think that the government and the party in power deserve to be reelected. It's one that I would describe as right now quite popular. And so it's an environment that no opposition leader has an easy, ability to add in the external threat that Donald Trump plays. And this is a really tough job right now. I think we have to just keep in mind that any opposition leader would be facing a number of obstacles to overcome when you have a popular prime minister and this external threat. And now other threats like Alberta separation in Quebec. These are all things that I think play to Mark Carney's strengths and force the comparison with Pierre Poilievre that doesn't always end favorably for him.
Okay. David, thank you for this. Appreciate the time. David Coletto of Abacus Data.
Thanks, Michael.